So, this is the Stronger Business Together podcast where business owners learn from each other's journeys. So, no theory, no gurus, just real journeys and overcoming some real hurdles. So, today I'm really excited. I'm joined by Andy Bell, who runs Set Studio. And like every business owner, he's in the middle of building, fixing, and growing something that really matters. So, Andy, welcome.
Thanks very much for having me, Granger. This is a real pleasure.
Fantastic. So, in plain English, what does your business do?
So, we are Set Studio and we're design and development partners for companies. So, our whole mantra is we come in, we simplify the problem for you, and we deliver a system that'll help you to grow over the next 2, 3, 5 years with the aspirations that you set out at the start.
And are those software systems or internal systems, physical systems? What sort of systems do you mean?
Multiple. So design systems is our main bread and butter, but we give companies communication systems and organizational structures, governance systems, any system, because that's the root of everything for us. Like anything that is problematic can usually be either fixed or at least greased by a system. So we calculate all the systems that are going to help each individual company or organization to get where they actually want to go as a sort of outsider perspective.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. So, who do you love helping and what are they typically dealing with themselves?
So our ideal clients are SMEs that have a sort of healthy turnover and they want to go to like the next level. So they can see a growth path for themselves. They can see an expansion path, but they don't quite know how to get there. So they're the ideal client for us because we've seen it and experienced everything with all the different clients we've had over the years. So we can usually pull on those experiences and actually help them to simplify that problem because when you want to push yourself to the next level, it's quite easy to be overwhelmed by the steps required to get there or not even know the steps to get there in the first place. So that's the role that we try to fulfill for these companies is yes, we give all that creative power that they need, but also we help the fundamental business at a core to smooth that path to get that growth that they're looking for too.
And why would they then sort of come looking for you? What would trigger them to say, I need your business?
So usually it's a different. They'll come at us with a different goal to what they actually end up with. So it might be something like we need a new brand, or it might be we need a refresh of our website, or we need something that feels like a big project. And then when they come to us with that initial problem that they've got, like we make all clients go through a discovery period. So regardless of the structure of what they come with, so they might come with a really detailed brief, they might come with business plans, they might come with all this stuff, but we go right back to zero again with them and say, okay, well, what triggered this thought to start with? What triggered this movement? And then we try and sort of piece it back together like detectives almost, while we interrogate all the different stakeholders as well. And often what we come back with is, you said you wanted this. What you actually probably need is this instead. And that might well be a similar form to what they asked for. So say, for example, they came with, we need a new website. There'll be a new website at the end, but the process of getting to that is dismantling all of these parts of the existing systems, replacing them with better systems and saying, right, well, now you're on a more positive footing to actually gain something from this new website rather than just getting a lick of paint, which you might have got had you gone to a different agency.
Yeah. Excellent. Brilliant. So when did the business start and what was the original spark that got you going?
So it started. So I've worked in agencies and client services for my entire career, near enough. And that's like nearly 20 years at this point. So about 10 years ago, I decided I want to go independent. Too many traumatic experiences from working in big agencies at the time. And I was like, you know what? I think I can go it alone as a freelancer for a while. So I did that. And then it was just a natural evolution from sort of being a freelancer, independent contractor. And then there was a turning point. It was probably around 2018 where I was like, I've got two ways I can go from here. I can go IR35, big contracts, settle in for 2-3 years at a time, or I can found an agency. And the decision making for me was, well, how bored will I be if I go into an IR35 contract? And the answer was almost certainly very. So I was like, let's stick to what I'm good at. The
Yes.
fast
Yeah.
paced, high pressure agency stuff. And then I built the agency up from there on.
Brilliant. So what does the business look like today in terms of size and shape?
So right now there is 4 of us who work full time, so including myself. And then the way we work these projects is over the time that I've been in the industry, I've picked up a black book that people can only dream of having. So I tend to pull in various specialists for various disciplines,
Right.
depending on what the project needs. So, for example, if you want a copywriter, then I've got contacts with copywriters who used to work on the gov.uk system. They're like proper copywriters that will simplify language for you, and X, Y, and Z. So all these like really cool independent specialists that we build a team around the project. So it could be a team of 4, which is just our core team, or it could go all the way up to being a team of 20. There's no set size per project. It's all dependent on what the sort of project requirements are at any given time.
Excellent. Love it. And why do your customers pick you?
It's a good question. So I think a lot of us come from our reputation. There'll be a lot of customers will come to us and say, look, we saw the work you did for client X and we wanted to talk to you about how you got there. And then it's always quite amusing in that situation, because if they don't know much about our process, they'll see the output and be like, the output looks fantastic. But then it's like, okay, well, this is what the input was. And they sort of explain the whole process to them. A lot of times that can either scare a client off, or it can make them really engaged in the idea of it, especially if you can cite good numbers to them as well in the process of doing that. But yeah, generally people come to us because they want something different. So they've maybe worked with an agency and like several years before that had a difficult process. So when they've come to do sort of a redesign or a refresh, they go, well, let's have a fresh agency to work with too.
Yeah.
And then we sort of welcome them in on that aspect too. So it all varies so much for the sort of source of where projects come from for us.
Brilliant. Like that. Yes. Just looking for, they've seen it before, or actually they're looking for something different. What are you aiming for in the next 12 months and why?
So I think it's a really boring answer, Granger, but I think based on...
Oh, there's no such thing as boring answers.
I'm a sort of relentless pragmatist, and there's a lot of unsettling stuff happening in the world right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, instability. So what we've wanting to do now for the next 12 months or so is to build a solid base, is to do what we do right, to sort of stick in our lane, stick where we know we're good at, and then when it comes to getting beyond 2026, you start to see what the impact of the current instability is, and then you can work from there. But at least you've got that solid base underneath you. So we're not doing anything exciting this year. We're just doing what we do well instead. Anchoring to that when you have no idea what else is going on everywhere else.
But that's really important anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Having that stable number of clients, stable systems, stable organization. And actually that's what you bring to your clients. You're trying to help them build that stable anyway. So actually you're being true to yourself by doing exactly that.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, is that we are applying the stuff that we sort of educate our clients with to our own processes at the moment. There's been quite a lot of change over the way that technology works, where design works over the last few years as well, and there's been elements that we wanted to explore, and so we're giving ourselves the time to do that. It means we're being a lot more choosy about the sort of clients we work with, but that, albeit feels risky, you tap yourself on the back 6 months later when you spend time really thinking about like how a client project is going to work and what the risks are, and is it going to be difficult? Is it potentially going to go wrong? If you try and counter a lot of that risk, the clients that you get unbelievably good. And yeah, you give yourselves that time to sort of solidify certain parts of how you actually do things and the processes.
Oh, Andy, thank you for your honesty there. So let's move on
Yeah.
to Act Two now, your journey, what you've learned. And so we talked about that early spark, but
Mhm.
what was the problem you think you were trying to solve in the marketplace when you decided, I'm not going to do R35, I'm actually going to try and do something that solves something? What was that original idea?
So it comes from the experience of working in agencies where, I've worked in like huge agencies, hundreds of people in them, and tiny agencies with a handful of people in them. And consistently across the board, regardless of the size, they were making the sort of same mistakes as each other. And a lot of the time, those mistakes were funneling as much in as possible and then spreading it as thin as possible. And delivering the work, just getting the SOWs in and just churning.
Yeah.
And there's always, and the quality of work, even with some of the most talented people I've ever worked with in these places, I learn a lot in those places, but the output quality was always underwhelming, to say the least. And I think that's where agencies get a bad name from too. And what I really wanted to do, yeah,
Ability to do. So, I mean,
yeah.
an important thing with teams is, repeating habits or a pulse or,
Mhm.
daily routines, etc. So what have you put in place then to help bring the team stronger together?
I think one thing that's really helped, and it's taken us a good couple of years to do this, is we've got the process, as we call it, and it's this internal document, well, it's multiple documents, and it's a specified process of how we do go from initial inquiry all the way through to delivering work at the end. And it's taken us project after project and fallouts and different tensions to a system now that at any point in any project, we can refer back to our own system that we built for ourselves and say, right, well, we're supposed to be here right now, and this is how we're supposed to be dealing with it, regardless of difficulties that come with different clients and their different contexts. We've got like this sort of grounding system where it's like, okay, well, let's not freak out about it. Let's refer back to our system. And the process of creating that system has sort of gelled the team together really well because it forced us to, you've got designers and developers who are often have a wall put in between them in different
Yeah,
agencies. And I'm saying, sit on each other's laps essentially and learn from each other. And
fantastic.
yeah, that process was difficult, but the long term benefit of it is that our sort of creative side are getting a lot more technical and a lot more technically knowledgeable, and the development side again a lot more creatively sort of educated as well, and understanding things that matter to designers. And yeah, it's improved everyone and gelled them together as well, but not without its fallouts and tensions that came with that. You've got to be willing to go through it. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And actually, what I like about that is then not only did you write it down, but you've also been talking about that by the reality of now trying to make it happen, that you learn
Yeah.
to improve it and develop it. I've
Yeah.
worked with project management teams in my past, and there was the project management system. But the
Hmm.
reality is, day to day, it doesn't actually work because no one's actually gone back and challenged the system. So that's what
Exactly.
we started doing. We started updating and changing our project management system. The project managers loved it because now
Yeah.
they started evolving a system that worked for them in their environment rather than that it was just the Prince 2 way.
Yeah. One good thing as well on that note is because it's not my process, it's the studio's process. Is I think it creates a comfort level for everyone to challenge aspects of it without feeling like they're upsetting anybody as well. Like we've got a culture where if stuff is going wrong, we have to talk about what's going wrong. Like there's no point in stewing on it. It's like, okay, well, why is the process letting us down at this particular point right now? Like, what is it that's not working? And then we'll hit the brakes and be like, right, well, let's using this exact context that we're in now. Let's try and refine and iterate over this specific part because it's clearly not working. And that's changed the way that we move from creative to development several times over the sort of last 2 years. sort of modifying the bridge between those and modifying the processes either side of it as well to make sure that there's no problems going transitioning from one discipline to the other. It's as smooth a ride as possible. And I hate to break it to everyone, but documentation is the answer to that.
I totally agree. If you get to know me, I'm a real process person, so I
Yeah.
totally believe in that. So, I mean, you talked about your people a lot and some of the difficulties. What have you learned about developing people that you wished maybe you'd known earlier?
I think like it feels really obvious, and I imagine the listeners will, of course, that's the answer. But it's actually ask them what they want to do. Like, what is it that you actually want to get better at? Like, and don't hold them to that too. So a great example of that is our sort of design lead really wanted to get better at illustration as a sort of discipline. Helped him to go through that. And in the process of that, I was like, actually, I think what the problem is that I'm actually looking for a better way to sort of get creativity out of my brain. It's like sort of release it. So then he sort of got into lettering and sketching. I just sort of let him explore that. And the result of that is that there's now a confidence in going from blank canvas to concepts, which was he was struggling with, which I think all designers do at some point in their career, where there's a sort of crisis of confidence in your ability to deliver a good creative output. And that's the main thing. And it's the same with on the development side too. Is sort of exploring accessibility and then exploring design systems whole and exploring different technologies, and all of it has resulted in more curiosity and sort of appreciation of different sort of technologies and disciplines. And it's all about, for me, it's like try and give your staff members that more rounded view of things. And because as they're developing and increasing seniority, they're really important principles when you're making decisions, is to be able to appreciate all arguments and make the right decision based on those arguments. I think if you come in with fixed opinions on certain things, which is very sort of common in developers, changing that mentality is really important, not just in the sort of natural evolution into more leadership, but it's also makes you a better developer because you appreciate all the different problems. And whereas before you might just get stressed out about those problems, but there's always a reason for a problem. So it's encouraging that thought process of, well, try and find that reason first before you start to get downbeat or stressed out about it.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I absolutely love that. Well done. That's fantastic. That delights me that people do that. And that's one of the purposes that I created my business, was to do exactly that and help others see that. So awesome. So what do you do now in your business to focus on doing the right things and keeping the business healthy, even when it gets really busy?
So I think one thing that I always try to do is to sort of take a lot of the pressure off the people like that work for me, because ultimately the responsibility of the business is on me. What I try to do in that sense is, like, if mistakes are made, they're not punished. Mistakes are like talked about instead, and I want people to feel like they can make a mistake and learn from it and not be sort of reprimanded, which is, when you're employing people that have also worked in other agencies, getting that mentality out of them to start with is really hard, because I think anyone who's worked in agencies have worked in places where even if you cough wrong, you go in the boardroom. And so it's creating that culture that, so like, it doesn't matter if you make a mistake, and creating the lines between the studio and clients as well, so they understand that the client's not going to get mad if something goes wrong, because you're also educating the client of, there is no such thing as a perfect sort of process and a perfect project. So things are going to go wrong in certain places, and I guess it all just roots back to me of, any given point, if people have been pragmatic, then even if a big mistake happens, the damage of that big mistake is going to be a lot less if people be pragmatic and balanced about it, rather than falling out of each other and creating issues like that. So I try and create this like good culture between the clients and the studio as well. So everyone
Yeah.
appreciates each other for who they are, and everyone understands each other. We keep a sort of record on clients of, okay, well, this client X, Y, and Z might stress them out, so we try and avoid doing that, but they're also very reasonable, so try and push them down, A, B, and C. And that sort of documentation again is part of the process of you just try and counter all of the things that you can see happening that might go wrong. If you try and counter them early, then when they do actually go wrong, you've got something that's ready to address that particular problem rather than being reactive and almost certainly doing something worse.
Brilliant. I totally agree. Again, a fantastic answer. I just love what you're talking. Totally agree with that. The
Mhm.
expression that I use my lean world, which I use to make all my life simpler, is attack the
Yeah.
process, not the person. So brilliant.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Act 3 now, our hurdle, as
Mhm.
we think about the hurdle we're going to discuss. So what do we choose? What have we chosen to talk about today? What's the hurdle?
Well, the question is that we're always busy, but it feels chaotic. And every day is firefighting rather than progress. How would I go about resolving this?
Brilliant. Yes, great one. And we picked one from project management organization that
Mhm.
help clients through big projects, etc., which was right up your street. So excellent. So let's try and think and unpick this as we go through. So let's just think about today. What do we think is happening today to cause that? And maybe using examples within your own business. What facts do you think we should be looking for?
I think a really early point to start is, what does everyone's workload currently look like? And if you can't answer that question, why can't you answer that question? Like, why don't you know what everyone's workload looks like at the moment? And what do the calendars look like too? So have they got a 2-week deadline to deliver something, but have they also got 7 meetings booked in for the next 2 weeks in order to do that? So like, are you creating the environment for people to actually get stuff done? Like when we're always busy, but it feels chaotic, to me feels like there's a lot of overwhelm and not enough time.
Yeah.
Go right back to basics. Like, how much time in a day does everyone have? How much work are you putting on the plate? How much time are you taking away from them via various different meetings? Then you can ask the question, do they need to be in these meetings? Or can they get a transcript or a summary? You know, do we really need them to hit deadline X, deadline Y? Can we push them down the road a bit further, or can we take responsibility off them completely?
Yeah.
So that sounds to me like that might be the problem: is there's too much to do, not enough time to do it, and too many people doing the same that have been in that position. Yeah.
And we can sometimes that be showing up maybe maybe we're taking on too much work, but
Yeah.
often we may not be taking on work because we think we don't have the capacity, and maybe we do understand capacity, but
Mhm.
often we just are taking on the work, knowing that we've got the space, but the organizational structure, as you say, is taking place, which is not allowing that work to flow through and actually delivered. So it
Yeah.
feels chaotic, even though we often think we may be overloading the system, but often the system's not overloaded. It's actually the way the system is working. So
Mhm.
based on your experience, what do you think they've already tried? And, because I love the expression, I've tried everything. Yeah, well, I've tried hundreds of things, hundreds. Well, I've tried 10 things, 10. Well, okay, I tried one thing, it didn't work. So what do you think they've already tried? What do you think's driving that?
I mean, imagine they probably. I think the first thing they probably tried is drinking a bottle of wine every night after work, and that's probably not worked. And then I imagine so other things that often get tried in these situations is to might have like an all hands team, all hands, and present an opportunity for people to talk about what the problem is without any sort of prep work in advance, and it's turned into a community slang off match with each other. And I imagine not much else if they're in this position.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly the problem. And like you alluded to there, they maybe have tried one thing or maybe two things, and given up when neither of those worked.
And often those things have probably come because they've read about them, or other people
Yeah.
have talked about them, or they've watched some YouTube channels or whatever, and they've found some stuff. So, oh yeah, that's what we need to do. But
Mhm.
when they bring something new into the business, why do you think it would fail? Because you've got some of that experience. Not that it fails in your business. Why do when we bring things new into a business does it fail?
I think one of the common ways that new things in the business fail is because they're suddenly just brought on. Overnight, it'll be we've got a new process, or we're going to use this new project management system now. With
Because
no
it's going to fix everything.
exactly, we've decided we're going to use Jira now, and given that no one any sort of like pre-education on what that is, what the problem is that it's even trying to fix. It's just we're just going to throw a tool in there, and I think the advice I'd give to listeners on that is before you think about introducing any new thing, you've got to sit back and think, well, is it what am I specifically trying to fix with this thing that I'm going to
Yeah.
introduce? Like, what is the actual problem I'm trying to fix? If you can't answer that, you need to step further back because you need to then work out, well, what is the problem in the first place? And that again goes back to basics: just lay everything out, and then you're in the position you're in already because you've got the ability to sort of look at a bigger picture and say, okay, well, I can see some problems here. And then you purposely pick a system to fix that problem rather than, yeah, I read that Jira is very good, so we're going to try and use it. It might
Yeah.
well not be the option for you, but there's 100 other options out there that you can choose from, or different systems that will help you get to that where you need to be.
And what they've probably tried in the past, as you say, they've picked a system, they've picked a new way of working, but what they've not done is probably understood where their current process is actually failing, which you talked about at the beginning, understanding the facts, understanding where it's going wrong, and just picking small changes. It's the power of small
Yeah.
little changes to make, rather than one big change. Yes, eventually we need to make a big change, but big change is the consequence of lots of little changes that have experimented and found out where things are failing.
Yeah. I've got there's a print by an artist called Brendan Dawes that I have in my office, and I've had in my office for about a decade at this point. And it's really simple. It's a scribbly line that's in four circles that gets progressively neater as it gets to the end, and then underneath it just says process. And I think if everyone had that print on their desk, I think everything would get better for everyone, because it just demonstrates that there is no linear, there is no straight lines. Is messy, and then it gets slightly less messy, and then it gets slightly less messy until the point where it's a neat-ish circle at the end. And that's where you're always going to be, because you're never finished. There's no end. There is no
very good.
Yeah.
So what experiments do we think? Because I like the word experiment, because just trials is thing. What sort of couple of experiments do you think we should get them to run in the next week to start to see either better facts or a better way might start emerging?
I think one thing that I've used this with clients before is that every person in the organization has to go through the next 2 weeks of calendar, and every meeting or every sort of call that they've been invited to, give them the ability to decline it.
Yeah.
And then to see what the impact of that is in 2 weeks' time. Usually people will have their meetings in the calendar, because a lot of the time they've just been invited, because invite all the engineers, invite all the designers. And then after that 2 weeks, you then, okay, what does the output look like at the start? And then what does the output look like at the end of those 2 weeks? You'll probably find there's a lot more productivity in the office, and the people are generally happier as well. And then it's like, okay, well, is this sustainable? Can these people not be in these meetings in the long term? And how do we communicate with them in the long term? Yeah, then that'd be the first one I try.
And we're thinking about reducing meetings. A couple of things I always say to my clients is, unless it's a brainstorming meeting, nothing can be said in the meeting that hasn't written down beforehand.
Yeah.
So if you're not writing down, then actually you're wasting your time, because you're just talking to air. If you write it down, people can read it, we can improve it, we can develop it. And the next one is the Elon Musk rule, which I like, that he came up with, which is if you're not adding value in the meeting, leave. Yeah, he'd say, I'll actually fire you for staying in a meeting and not adding value, and have that
Yeah,
permission to walk out. I don't need to be here. Goodbye.
yeah,
And have that strength to be able to do that, but the permission to do that,
yeah,
which is quite strong. So
yeah.
brilliant. So
You see a lot of that. Yeah, all gone. Carry on.
what do you think? What do you think will get in the way?
I think what might get in the way is existing chips on shoulders and people thinking, well, there is no optional meetings. So people in positions of decision makers having that hard line attitude that, yeah, well, every meeting's important. It probably coincides with them organizing every meeting, but it's getting over those personalities that's hard. I think it's so hard because it depends on different personalities each time. It's on how you deal with that problem. But
Yeah.
I think you've got to create some safety for them too, because a lot of the time that hardline response is a discomfort reaction. So you're making them feel uncomfortable in their position, and I think a lot of that you can solve with like reaffirming with them that their position is not to be a meeting organizer. They produce more value than that. So it's like change that and give them the sort of responsibility of, okay, well, everyone, in your opinion, everyone has to be kept in the loop at all times. How do you do that without taking half an hour or an hour of the time several times a day? What system can you put in individually that you can own that will change that? And usually just sort of shifting the responsibility. So they might feel like you're taking something away from them, but you're not taking it away. You're just changing the form of it and saying, well, this will be more efficient for you if you try it. And usually it's a small win like that, and it's something you alluded to earlier there. A small win like that can change the momentum. I often use the analogy of football match for this is when, even when you feel like the entire opposition team is pressing against you, one or two smart passes can get you in a position where you're actually doing the opposite and pressing them. And making those small adjustments that can change momentum altogether. The momentum might be impounded by that one, big personality. So if you can find a way of dealing with them specifically away from everyone else, then you can create that momentum shift that then sort of cascades down the entire organization. That's fundamentally what you're after in these sorts of situations. Yeah.
And this specific one, is written in by a business owner, who's got 11 staff, if they're already recognizing they're in that chaotic state,
Which is
then
great.
it has to come from them. So they have to
Yeah.
do, as you call it, the all hands meeting and say, right, over the next 2 weeks, this is what you're going to do. I will give you permission because they've probably built the system in the first place.
Yeah,
so they've got to
exactly.
realize they've got to unpick it. So they've got to say, this is what's going to happen. You have my permission to walk out of meetings. You have my permission to do this. And in 2 weeks' time, let's get together and see what that does. So often it's a big change for the business owner, the business leader, to actually make that decision rather than just put up with the status quo, which unfortunately they've probably sanctioned through not forcing change rather than actually making that happen.
Yeah, that's good. But
Brilliant.
the fact that they know is a good sign to start with. If they're writing that question to start with, then there's potential for it to be fixed because they're curious about what's going on. Yeah.
Yes, maybe they just said, we've had enough.
Exactly.
Absolutely. They've had enough of the wine every night. Brilliant. So how would they know whether it's been successful or not in 2 weeks' time?
I think you ask the question back to them. So do you feel chaotic at the moment? Do you feel like you're currently firefighting? And what would you consider your stress level to be at the moment? And maybe you ask them that question at the start too, and you get them to write the answer down to that, and then you present the answer back to them after you ask them the second time and say, would you still say this answer is still true, or is it not true? And usually that 2 paragraphs of text will be enough for them to see, all right, okay, something's definitely changed for the better. And like I say, then you got to latch onto that momentum and like, okay, well, what can we do further to stop this from happening again? Like, what more processes can we adjust to sort of put you to swing the pendulum the complete opposite direction? So then, because naturally processes they're not going to be adhered to over time. There's going to be shifts. So really, what you want to be pushing them to do then is like, well, let's make it even more unrecognizable. And then give you the sort of the skills and the tools to be able to monitor when things are getting out of hand, so you can make smaller adjustments in the future rather than having to do this sort of big bang process change that you're having to do right now. So it's just having that documentation again for NJ, I'm afraid.
And the other bit I would say is also have the realization that there will be small failures, and maybe even big failures within it. But the realization is that's the bit that we then need to really fix. As you talked about, the communication between the projects and the different people. You don't build communication necessarily by having lots and lots of meetings and firefighting. No. You actually build proper communication processes. So by eliminating the noise of all those meetings, by giving people permission not to turn up, the real problems, the underlying problems will then surface, which then need to be fixed properly by the business. And I think that's the beauty of making those type of changes. We think something will turn up and go, we've got to go back to the old way. No, what you've just exposed is the real underlying problem where all that noise was hiding. And that's where the real opportunity is in the business. Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. So let's go to our close now. So what did you hear yourself say today that maybe surprised you?
Drinking a bottle of wine every night for a week. Never thought I'd say that on a podcast. Here we are.
Which is the usual solution sometimes to ongoing problems in businesses, isn't it?
Can neither confirm nor deny.
Brilliant. And Andy, how can people get hold of you so they can follow the journey and maybe walk with you?
So they can look at the Set Studio site. It's a really simple domain. It's just set.studio. Or they can catch me on the internet. So on my personal site and social handles is bell.bz. Tend to hang around mostly on Blue Sky. So that's the best place to find me. But yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Andy, thank you so much for being open today. And I know that our listeners will get a lot out from this conversation. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.